The scream cut through the morning air like a blade. It wasn't polished or polite, and it wasn't meant to be. It was raw, desperate, and loud enough to make everyone in the parking lot freeze. A single dad janitor, still holding a mop bucket, ran forward, waving his arms as a luxury car door swung open. In that split second, the world paused, and what happened next would change several lives forever. If stories about unexpected heroes, second chances, and quiet people with powerful hearts move you, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more real, life-changing stories. The man who shouted was named Daniel Reyes. He worked the early shift as a janitor at a towering corporate headquarters downtown, a building of glass and steel that reflected wealth and ambition in every polished surface. Daniel arrived before sunrise every day, long before executives filled the elevators, because early mornings were the only hours that fit around his real job, being a father. At 37, his back ached more than it should, his hands were always rough with cleaning chemicals, and his eyes carried a tiredness that came from years of interrupted sleep and constant worry. He was raising his 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, alone after her mother died suddenly from a brain aneurysm 3 years earlier. Since then, Daniel's life had become a careful balancing act of school drop-offs, packed lunches, hospital bills that never seemed to end, and a job that barely paid enough but offered health insurance he couldn't lose. That morning had started like many others. Daniel had walked Sophia to the bus stop while the sky was still gray, her small hand gripping his tightly. She had asked if he would be home early tonight, and he had smiled and said he would try, knowing full well that overtime was likely. After watching the bus disappear around the corner, Daniel headed to work, his thoughts heavy, but focused. He prided himself on doing his job well, even though most people never noticed him. He cleaned offices where million-dollar decisions were made, wiped fingerprints from doors executives passed through without a glance, and emptied trash bins filled with the leftovers of catered lunches that cost more than his weekly groceries. The CEO of the company, Michael Harrington, was not yet aware of Daniel's existence. Michael was known throughout the city as a brilliant leader, a self-made man who had turned a struggling tech firm into an industry giant. He was respected, admired, and feared in equal measure. His days were packed with meetings, his mind always several steps ahead. That morning, he was already running late for a board presentation that could determine the future of a major merger. His driver had pulled the sleek black car into the executive parking area, and Michael stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, his attention completely consumed by numbers and strategy. Daniel was mopping near the far end of the lot when something felt wrong. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a tightening in his chest and a prickling at the back of his neck. Years earlier, during a short stint working construction, Daniel had seen what could happen when people ignored small warning signs. He glanced toward the executive car, then down at the pavement. Near the rear tire, barely noticeable against the asphalt, was a dark, oily puddle spreading slowly outward. Daniel's heart jumped. He had seen leaks like that before, and he knew exactly how dangerous they could be if they reached the brakes or ignited near a hot engine. He dropped his mop without thinking and ran. The words tore out of him, loud and urgent, not caring who heard or what the consequences might be. For a moment, people stared. A janitor yelling in the executive parking lot was not a common sight. Michael turned, startled, irritation flashing across his face as he processed the interruption. He was about to brush it off, about to step into the car anyway, when the smell hit him. A sharp chemical odor mixed with burning rubber. Seconds later, a small spark flashed beneath the vehicle, followed by a loud pop as part of the undercarriage ignited. Security rushed in. The driver pulled back. Flames licked up from beneath the car, and within moments the vehicle was engulfed enough to make it clear that if Michael had gotten inside, the outcome could have been catastrophic. Sirens wailed as the fire suppression system activated, and the chaos that followed blurred into a rush of movement and noise. Daniel stood frozen for a second, his heart pounding so hard he thought he might collapse. All he could think of was Sophia, and the terrifying realization of how close he had come to being responsible for a tragedy if he had stayed silent. Michael watched the scene unfold with wide eyes, his phone forgotten in his hand. The adrenaline hit him all at once, and with it came the understanding of what had almost happened. When the fire was finally under control, his gaze searched the crowd until it landed on Daniel, standing off to the side in his janitor's uniform, face pale but resolute. In that moment, the labels of CEO and janitor seemed meaningless. There was only a man who had nearly lost his life, and another who had instinctively stepped in to save it. The rest of the day passed in a haze for Daniel. He expected to be reprimanded for shouting, for leaving his station, for causing a scene. Instead, he was called into an office he usually only cleaned after hours. Michael sat across from him, the polished desk between them, and listened as Daniel explained what he had seen and why he had reacted the way he did. Daniel spoke simply, without embellishment, his voice steady despite his nerves. He mentioned his past work experience, his daughter, and the fact that sometimes you just know when something is wrong and you can't ignore it. What Daniel didn't know was that Michael was going through a reckoning of his own. For years he had prided himself on logic and control, on systems and forecasts. Yet his life had just been saved by instinct, empathy, and the courage of someone he had never noticed before. That realization unsettled him in a way no failed deal ever had. After thanking Daniel, Michael asked questions he had never asked an employee in that role before. He wanted to know about Daniel's schedule, his challenges, and his dreams beyond the janitor's closet and mop cart. Life didn't change overnight, but something shifted. In the weeks that followed, Daniel noticed small differences. His supervisor became more understanding about his need to leave on time for Sophia's school events. A raise came through that seemed too generous to be a coincidence. Then came an invitation to attend a company-sponsored training program, one designed to help employees move into facility management and operations roles. Daniel hesitated at first, doubting whether he belonged in a classroom again after so many years, but he thought of Sophia watching him leave every morning and decided to try. The program was challenging. Daniel studied late at night after Sophia fell asleep, his textbooks spread out on the same table where he helped her with homework. There were moments when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, when the old fear of failure crept in. But there was also a growing sense of possibility. For the first time since his wife's death, Daniel felt like he was moving toward something instead of just surviving. Michael, for his part, found himself paying closer attention to the people who kept his company running behind the scenes. He initiated safety audits, improved communication between departments, and made a point of learning names and stories. The near miss in the parking lot became a quiet turning point, a reminder that leadership was not just about vision at the top, but awareness and respect at every level. Months later, Daniel stood in that same parking lot, this time in a different uniform. He had been promoted to assistant facilities manager, a role that came with better pay, regular hours, and a sense of dignity he hadn't realized he was missing. Sophia attended his small promotion ceremony, beaming with pride as she clapped too loudly and hugged him afterward. Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he held her, realizing that one moment of courage had set off a chain reaction he never could have planned. The story of the janitor who stopped the CEO from getting into a car spread quietly through the company, not as a headline, but as a reminder. It reminded people to look up from their phones, to listen when someone speaks with urgency, and to recognize the humanity in everyone they pass by. For Daniel, it reinforced a lesson he would carry forever, that doing the right thing, even when you're scared, can change everything. As this story draws to a close, take a moment to reflect on the people around you who might go unseen, and how a single act of awareness or kindness can ripple outward in ways you'll never fully know. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or made you see the world a little differently, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so these stories can reach more people who need them. And before you go, leave a comment telling us what this story made you feel or who it reminded you of. Your words matter more than you think.